Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about an American politician named Elizabeth Warren. As the Democrats begin to come out with their candidates for the upcoming presidential election coming next year in 2020, well, Elizabeth Warren has always been a Democrat who's trying to throw her hat in the ring. To be frank though, this chick really doesn't have a chance at all. Not only will she not win the Democratic primaries, but there's no way in hell she'd ever beat the president. So I don't know why she keeps trying. And well, after watching today's video, you'll quickly see why Elizabeth Warren will never be president. Before we get to the latest news about her though, where Warren was talking about banning the Electoral College on a CNN town hall, well, we got a bit of catching up to do about this lady first. Most of you probably remember Warren's most noteworthy accomplishment already. She got one of the coolest nicknames from President Trump himself. The Don likes to call Liz Pocahontas, since Warren's been claiming to be a Native American for decades now. In fact, listing this on her applications and resume is what got Liz this far in life to begin with. She used to fake her Native American heritage to get into college and to get jobs, and she even leveraged it to win political elections in her state. All of that's based on a lie though. In fact, Warren unknowingly outed herself as not being Native when she took a DNA test and announced the results publicly. But instead of proving she was part Indian, Warren did quite the opposite. And this DNA test debacle from a few months ago has haunted Elizabeth Warren ever since. And now, before we get to Warren's first dumb comment, let's first take a minute to check out our newest sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Forget everything you think you know about mobile games, because one of the most ambitious and exciting new RPGs is now available on the platform. Raid Shadow Legends has just been released, and needless to say, it's going to change everything. Playing Raid is the most immersive experience you'll find on a smartphone, and it really can only be compared to the biggest PC and console games out there. And what's the best part about Raid Shadow Legends? Well, it's completely free, so why not give it a try today? Raid has all the features you've come to expect from a new RPG game too, like an amazing storyline, awesome 3D graphics, giant boss fights, PvP battles, and hundreds of champions to collect and customize too. Wow, pretty cool. Raid is getting big real fast too, so go to the description of this video and use the links below to sign up, and you'll get 50 silver right away, immediately. Thanks guys, and I hope you enjoy this new offer. Now, back to the show. Great, now that that's out of the way, let's get back to talking about Elizabeth Warren. Now, we're mostly caught up to about a week ago, when Warren made another really dumb comment on TV. Last week, when the college admissions scandal was breaking in the news, and everyone was talking about it, well, Elizabeth Warren actually had the balls to say this on live television. Take a look.
So, as a parent, how much sympathy would you have for these parents who are embroiled in this alleged cheating scandal?
Zero.
Zero. Okay. Would President Warren ground the 737 MAX 8 right now?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Wow. And while I agree with Warren's conclusion, those parents who cheated to get their kids into college do deserve zero sympathy, but at the same time, Elizabeth Warren saying she has zero sympathy for those who cheated, well, that's pretty rich coming from someone who cheated their way into college themselves. Talk about a hypocrite. As I said before, Warren has been claiming to be a Native American for decades. She's even used her fake ancestry to get into college, into law school, and even to get elected into office. So if anyone should have sympathy for these cheaters, it should have been a known cheater like Elizabeth Warren. Next, let's finally get to the juicy stuff from Warren's town hall meeting that was on CNN a few days ago. The Clinton News Network likes to set up these fake wannabe town halls every so often in order to have a way for their Democratic darlings to try and speak and look down to earth with the people and Americans. It's usually some real softball fluff piece bullshit, but this time, Elizabeth Warren has given us a lot to talk about. Keeping in line with her cheating theme, this clip we're going to watch goes over why Warren wants to do away with the Electoral College. For those who don't know, the Electoral College is the system used to elect the United States presidents. It's a strong, practical system that has done well for our nation for the last 240 years or so. But for some reason, lots of people, who are almost always Democrats, well, they want to reconfigure this system that's not even really broken. Why would they want to do this, you might ask? Well, Elizabeth Warren is about to tell us, but it's not really for the reasons most Democrats would say. Really, the left thinks abolishing the Electoral College will help them win the presidency more, thus showing that they and Elizabeth Warren are trying to cheat America once again. Here's the clips of Warren talking about the Electoral College. Let's go ahead and take a look for ourselves.
Great question, but can I go you one bigger? Yeah. And that is, I believe we need a constitutional amendment that protects the right to vote for every American citizen and to make sure that vote gets counted. We need to put some federal muscle behind that.
That's funny. You'd think that if Warren wanted to protect the right to vote, she would do everything she can to keep voting safe, secure, and uncorrupted. But that doesn't really gel with what Warren and the left's stances are on voter ID laws. Not at all. Liberals are against requiring an ID to vote because they claim it's racist or some other bullshit. Really, they just want the voting laws as loose and easy as possible so they can once again find a way to cheat the system. That's right. When I said cheating was a running theme with Elizabeth Warren, I really wasn't kidding you guys. Her and cheating go hand in hand, just like peanut butter and jelly, or Bert and Ernie, or Abbott and Costello.
And we need to repeal every one of the voter suppression laws that is out there right now.
Voter suppression laws? Is that really what you're going with here, Liz? Jeez. Needless to say, there's no such thing as voter suppression laws. Really, that's just a made-up name to try and scare people about voter ID laws. As I mentioned before, the left wants to not only stop more rigorous voting rules from being passed, like requiring an ID for starters, which is something that's required to buy cigarettes, alcohol, and shit. I still get carded at the movies sometimes, but God forbid we check IDs when people are voting for the leaders of our country. And well, not only are Democrats against voter ID laws, they also want to repeal the voting protections we already have in order to make it even easier to vote. So I hope you guys are seeing the pattern here. First, the Democrats want to open up the borders and let in all the black and brown illegals possible. Then they want to make it even easier to vote, or rather, easier to cheat at voting and corrupt the process. This then makes it easier for their new illegal allies, which have been imported, to come in and steal the elections for them, voting when they shouldn't be or voting for other people in their name. And you might be asking yourself, how do the Democrats get the illegals to vote blue in the first place? Well, the liberals offer them free stuff like food stamps and healthcare, virtually buying their votes by spending our tax dollars on illegal invaders and their cause. Next comes the rub though. Now Warren is finally going to suggest a complete overhaul to the entire voting process and our election system. Take a look.
And I'll tell you one more. We need to make sure that every vote counts. And I want to push that right here in Mississippi, because I think this is an important point. You know, come a general election, presidential candidates don't come to places like Mississippi.
Speak for yourself, lady. Maybe Democrats don't come to Mississippi too often, but President Trump has sure been there multiple times. In fact, the president had 2 separate rallies in Mississippi in 2016, one in Jackson and one in Biloxi. And Trump hasn't forgotten about that state since then either, even holding another rally there as recent as last November, only 4 months ago. So no, really, presidents and candidates like Trump have been visiting Mississippi. So Warren is just lying to these people to try and pander to the audience. Also, before this lie, Warren was saying we need to make sure every vote counts. And well, lady, they already do count. Implying that some votes don't count is borderline scandalous too here, but it's also not surprising coming from Pocahontas.
That every vote matters. And the way we can make that happen is that we can have national voting, and that means get rid of the Electoral College and every vote.
Little bit of a hiccup in the video there, but Warren is obviously saying we should get rid of Electoral College. You know, the system that has done well for this country for over 200 years. Yeah, the very system that brought in some of the greatest leaders of all time, like Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, JFK, and Ronald Reagan. That's right, Elizabeth Warren and the left want to abolish that system to supposedly make every vote count, when really, the votes already do count. And abolishing the Electoral College won't even do what Elizabeth Warren is saying it will do right here. She claims that presidential candidates don't come to Mississippi, which is already false. Trump and Elizabeth Warren herself have already visited the state, so she's already starting off by solving a non-problem. But then her solution will do the opposite of what she claims it will. If presidents were elected by popular vote instead of Electoral College, then they would actually be less likely to visit Mississippi on the campaign trail. The population there is just under 3 million after all, making it about the 34th most populous state. So in order to better garner a popular vote, a potential candidate's time would be better spent in bigger states like California, Texas, Florida, and New York. So with that said, I gotta say, Elizabeth Warren, you need to get your head checked here or something. I'm really starting to think this old lady is losing her shit because she's really not making a lick of sense today. Reminds me of that scene from the Star Wars prequel movies, where the Galactic Senate gives away all of their voting rights to the Emperor. Padme says something like, "So this is how liberty dies," with thunderous applause. These people clapping at this Mississippi town hall are doing the same kind of thing, applauding a radical change that could retool this country's voting system from the ground up. And also, it could send us into an era of failing democratic leaders that will never stop. And it also just might cause the end of the United States as we know it. Next, for our final topic, let's talk about Warren's comments about the left's favorite boogeyman, white supremacy, and white nationalism to a lesser degree. You see, I've never seen or met a white supremacist in my entire 32-year life, but for some reason, liberals think there's a bunch of Nazis and KKK members running around the United States every day. Really though, this is just a way for them to attack all white people as a whole. If you're not an NPC liberal who goes along with everything that Democrats and CNN say, well, they will call you a white supremacist. Just wait for it. And it looks like Elizabeth Warren is no different here either. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next clip, where Elizabeth Warren answers a question related to the fake white supremacy issue.
My question is, Mississippi is a deeply red state and one of the poorest states in the country. Yet many white, poor, and working class citizens continue to vote against their economic interests.
It's working great for big oil companies that want to drill everywhere. It's just not working for people who see climate change bearing down upon us.
Wait a second, Elizabeth Warren didn't address white supremacy directly at all. She was just talking about stupid-ass climate change bullshit. The guy who asked the question was low-key attacking white people, that's for sure, but Warren admittedly didn't mention this at all, not directly. So why did I think she would say that here? Oh yeah, I know why. I got this video from a Twitter moment that probably misquoted her. This tweet from the official Twitter Moments account says, "White supremacists pose a threat to the United States just like any other terrorist group. Senator Elizabeth Warren is speaking to voters at a CNN presidential town hall in Jackson, Mississippi." But the video attached to this doesn't mention that at all. So one of two things could be going on here. Either Warren said that in a different part of the event, or Twitter is just trying to dog on white people here for no reason. I'll go ahead and assume the best and assume she did say it though, and give them the benefit of the doubt. Either way, they are wrong on this issue. Make no mistake. White supremacy does not pose a threat like any other terrorist group. Can you really compare the KKK to ISIS at this point? Muslims are killing people with terrorist attacks every day, not white supremacists. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed to find even one legitimate white supremacist if you tried your hardest. Muslim terrorists or Antifa, on the other hand, those guys are everywhere. We've seen their attacks and videos, and everything is on the record, so no, I'm not buying this bullshit. Might as well say Buddhists pose a threat like any other terrorist group, because that shit's just as relevant in the United States in 2019. And this attacking of these fake, non-existent white supremacists is all fine and dandy until you see people like Warren using that term to describe people like me or yourself. People who do nothing more than express opinions that oppose Democrats and woke SJWs. Jesus, will the Democrats ever get past this identitarian, virtue signaling nonsense? It really is amazing to see how far they've fallen recently. Lastly, let's look at one more tweet to really seal the deal on this anti-whiteness coming from Warren. On Monday, Liz said, "We have to recognize the threat of white nationalism. We've got to call it out. As President of the United States, my Justice Department will go after white nationalists with full prosecution." And let me go ahead and translate that for you, because it basically says, I, Elizabeth Warren, am going to criminalize free speech and use state power to go after political enemies that I don't like. Because, like what I said before about white supremacy, white nationalism is also bullshit, and it's just a stepping stone to that, to white supremacy, according to the liberals at least. And sure, on paper, there's really nothing wrong with being white or being a nationalist. That just means you're a European-descended, red-blooded American who loves their God and country. But the way the SJWs use the term is far different. According to them, white nationalist means you're a pro-white racist. That's one step away from being a white supremacist or even a Nazi. That's why lefties use this weasel-like strategy too. Instead of beating their opponents with a fair debate or striving to have better ideas than us, no, the Democrats just use name-calling as their go-to technique, calling everyone opposed to them a racist, sexist, bigoted white supremacist, or a Nazi or KKK member. All of these terms have lost most of their meanings now though, because like how the term white nationalist doesn't mean what you think it does, so too does every other attack the left is using against people they don't like. In the end, if the roles were reversed here and a Republican like President Trump was vowing to pack the Supreme Court with conservatives, and he said he wanted to get rid of Electoral College so his party would have an easier time winning, well, obviously Democrats and SJWs, they'd be losing their minds and saying Trump's destroying our American institutions. But now that the left are the ones that are losing, they of course are totally okay with changing things and cheating and moving the goalpost, just so they can get back into power. Such blatant hypocrites they are, the left. They're the ones who lie and cheat and steal, and do anything they can to get back into power. And despite what they claim, liberals like Elizabeth Warren, they're not trying to get into power to help people or to make America better. No, these kinds of progressives and SJW types, they just want to make themselves better and make themselves more powerful and richer too. What do you guys think? Is Elizabeth Warren trying to cheat the system once again? It does seem to be her MO throughout most of her life and political career. Can't get into college? Well, Elizabeth Warren just pretend to be Native American. Can't get into law school or the law firm you want? Well, why don't you just attack them for being sexist and anti-female, the Elizabeth Warren way? Yeah, Warren appears to be one of the worst out there, so leave a comment, tell me why you hate Pocahontas down below this video. And with all that said, thanks again for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see y'all next time.